Coming up this week on Success Won't Come Calling.
I think we're just so competitive as a family. In our family, if you beat an adult, you've genuinely beat them. It's none of that, you know, in some families you say, oh yeah, let the kids win. That doesn't happen in ours. So we've been competing since we could walk. You know, who can jump down the most stairs, who can run the shop the fastest, who can eat the dinner the fastest. Everything in our house from top to bottom is a competition.
Hello friends, how are you? Simon Gibson here. The podcast is Success Won't Come Calling, and this is the place to be if you want to be better tomorrow than you were today. You've just heard some clips from my guest this week, who is Natasha Jonas. She is a boxer, and I'm going to be talking a little bit more about Natasha by way of introduction shortly. But first of all, let's say hello to our technical wizard. He's ground control at the podcast. It's Jacob. How are you, sir?
I'm good, mate. These intros keep getting better and better.
No, I'm just building you up more every week, you see.
Technical Supremo last time.
Would you rather be ground control than a technical Supremo?
I don't know. That's a hard decision.
I was going to ask you, do you ride a skateboard or drive one?
Well, it's electric, so I guess drive.
So you drive a skateboard
at 20 miles an hour. Would you say it's drive or ride?
Yeah, I mean, we got to put some perspective on this because you're 23, so you're very much. I think you're still sneaking into the skateboard, driving stage of your life.
Too poor for a car. That's what it is.
You can't deliver petrol on one of them, can you? Because we have got a need in the country for some of those. You know.
I'm afraid I can't. No.
Could we diversify from HGV drivers to skateboard drivers delivering quite small amounts of petrol?
I could deliver takeaway.
What's up with Stacey this week? She's called in sick again, hasn't she?
Oh, I know. What's going on?
It's potential COVID, isn't it?
Is it? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, she woke up on Saturday morning and said she couldn't taste anything. So
she had a test.
Well, she did. Do you know what she did? One of those. What's the quick one? The lateral flow.
Oh, yeah.
So she did the lateral flow and it came back with negative, but she's not taking no for an answer because she's been to the proper one, the one which gets sent off to a lab, and as of now, it's still pending. But she's had a sprained ankle, now COVID. I just think she's fallen out of love with the podcast, hasn't she? Really?
She's not been here in weeks.
No.
And if Jess this time instead.
Yeah. So I'll say hello to Jess. Yeah,
okay.
I think so. Stacey Mark II. It's a better mark in my opinion, Jess. All right then. So it's start of a 10 before we introduce our guests. And I did very deliciously set this up by referring to HGV and petrol because I'm going to talk about that this week. It's September 2021, right towards the end of the month. And if you are a HGV driver, you are commanding the big bucks because what we've seen in recent weeks is that we have got 100,000 shortage in HGV drivers. Now, what I wanted to just chat about today was my views on why we've got that sort of shortfall. We all know what the impact of it is, which basically is that we've got queues of cars lining up down dual carriageways. We've got the risk of lack of food, or certainly some food and shortages in the supermarkets. And they're talking already about Christmas being adversely affected. Well, we've been let down again, haven't we, guys, really? You know me well enough. I'm not letting this government off the hook. And the first thing we've got to say is that this HGV driver shortage, the shortage of methods of transporting goods across the country is not new. Apparently, I saw some very reliable statistics that there's been a shortage for quite some years, certainly before Brexit. Remember that? Which I'm going to be touching on in a little while. But do you know what the government's solution was to this a couple of months ago? They increased the number of hours that HGV drivers are allowed to work per fortnight from 90 to 99. Well, that was a good idea, wasn't it? Because you know there's just loads of people out there who are thinking, I'd like to be a HGV driver. It sounds like a great career, but I wish they'd make the hours a bit longer. I wish they'd make conditions a bit worse. I wish we got a bit more tired from doing a longer working week. And that's the government's solution. Lo and behold, have lots of people flocked to fill that big gap? No, they haven't. They've probably decided that working another 9 hours a week for tough work, which is skill work, the people who drive these sort of vehicles are skilled. They've passed lots of qualifications. And I just think people have decided that working extra hours is no good. So well done to the government for that. They've not really solved the problem. The other solution they've come up with, having taken us through 5 years of extracting ourselves from the European Union, is that they're trying to turn the clock back and letting more people from the European Union in now because we need them. And the solution there is they're going to issue 5,000 temporary visas for HGV drivers in Europe to come back into the country and drive our lorries. Do we think they're going to? Of course they're not. Why would they? Why would they when they've been told for years that we don't want them to work here and that they're not welcome here? And also when they're also already doing good work elsewhere in the European Union. And even if those 5,000 workers do come, there's 100,000 shortfall. So I'm sorry, Boris, neither of those are solutions. But the problem doesn't just end with the government. And I think the problem, in fact, starts in an area which I've talked about before. And that's the fact, in my opinion, that there are certain types of workers in this country who've been treated very poorly for too long. And now we're starting to reap the rewards of that. So what I mean by that is that this HGV driver shortage, such an important job, guys, transportation of goods, food, medicines, all across the country. Even before Brexit, we had a shortfall of about 50,000. After Brexit and during COVID, that's doubled. So why is there this shortage? Well, I'll give you my views. Firstly, that HGV drivers are treated poorly. They work very long hours. They work in poor conditions. I've heard from HGV drivers who are sleeping in lay-bys, who are having to go to the toilet in a milk bottle, who are having to pay their own hotel fees and then try and claim it back at some later stage, who are being told by their employers that they have to work longer hours than they're supposed to. Some of them are not being paid very much more than minimum wage. And I think people have just got smart and have decided that's not a way they want their career to develop. Now, what's the solution to that? Because if we've got a 100,000 driver shortage, and if there's no quick fix to that by, for example, these temporary EU visas, what's the long-term solution? Well, I think there's two things here. The first is I'm reaching out to those haulage companies who are already established. And guys, you've got to think about making yourselves attractive to your workforce. There are 1.6 million people between 16 and 65 who are unemployed in this country. And to get them to come and work for you, you're going to have to offer them more than just a job. You're going to have to think about what you pay them. You will have to think about how you incentivize them. You will have to think about the conditions they work in and about the chances they've got for progression and development. And I don't think you have, because if you had, you wouldn't have this problem, and we wouldn't have this problem. The second thing, and this again is an area I've spoken about before, I think we need more new businesses. We need more entrepreneurs. Because one of the statistics I saw in the news when all of this was being reported was that the average age of a HGV driver now is mid-50s. Now, there's nothing wrong with that because these guys will be very experienced, but that has gone up in the past 5 years from early 50s. So not only have we got this shortfall in this really important industry, but the problem is getting worse because the workforce is aging. And I have to ask, why are those companies not addressing that problem? Why are these positions that we've got not appealing to young people? Well, it's everything that I've talked about. You're not going to get someone to come and work for you in 2021 just because it's a job. People are more savvy. They're more smart. They've got access to more information. They've got access to technology. We're in a world also now after the pandemic where the options available to young people are much wider. And the time now is for employers to realise that we're entering, I think, the age of the employee, in terms of the employee having more value, more of a say, and more worth to businesses. And we need to start treating them with a fresh perspective. And that's why I say that we need more new businesses and more entrepreneurs, because with no disrespect to any of the more established businesses in this sector and generally, you've done this a long time. And are those sort of businesses really going to have the flexibility and the ability to think about the offerings that they're making to their team? What would you do now if you wanted to start a new trucking business? How would you find the money, the significant capital you would need to start that business? And I would apply that to any business. I think it's two things the government needs to focus upon, which they're not. I've spoken about this before. The first is giving young entrepreneurs access to the money they need in order to get these businesses off the ground. And rather than just talk about temporary fixes in this particular industry, like more visas, like this issue of getting people to work longer hours, why not look at finding a long-term solution, which is about bringing more new businesses into the sector with more fresh perspectives, with new ideas, and with an attitude which is about making themselves attractive to their employees, not just asking the employees to make themselves attractive to the company. So if we're going to solve this problem, which is a transportation problem, which will affect us all, it might get a bit worse before it gets better, guys. I think we need that long-term solution, not quick fixes. But the great news, the positive that I always try to end on, is that if you're listening to this and you are someone who is working for a company, who maybe has ideas that you want to progress your career and improve your life, improve your money, improve your take-home pay and your prospects, I think you're in a really good place, because these sort of businesses which have called the shots for so long, I believe the smart ones amongst them will have to make themselves more attractive to you. So realize your worth, look at your options, try and maneuver yourself into a position where you can take your opportunities. And I think these companies are going to have to reach out to you just as much as you need to reach out to them. And that's this week's Starter for 10. Now, guys, on with the episode. I'm delighted to say that my guest this week is Natasha Jonas. Natasha is a boxer. She was the first female boxer to represent the United Kingdom at the Olympic Games. That was back in 2012. Since then, she's gone on to win multiple medals at European Championships and World Championships. And she's also been involved in some of the most high-profile contests that the sport of boxing has ever seen. Natasha's ambitions have not finished yet. She very much has her eyes on winning the World Championship. I'm going to be asking Natasha more about that. But also, Natasha hasn't had her success without her fair share of challenge. You're going to hear me ask her about some of the struggles she faced in the early part of her career, particularly before she started boxing, and the injury that she suffered in another area of sport, which led on to her boxing career. Natasha is a really inspirational character, and I know you're going to really enjoy this episode. So without further ado, sit back and relax and enjoy this episode of the podcast with me, Simon Gibson, and my guest, Natasha Jonas. Here we go. Natasha, how are you? Lovely to see you.
I'm good. Thanks for waiting for me.
Oh, not at all. We're just glad to have you here. Really appreciate you doing this for us. Now, first of all, my hopes are never too high when I've got elite sports people on. But guest rider, we're keeping it nice and simple. Lime and soda. And that's because you're knee deep in training, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm like 3 weeks away from fighting on the Smith and Fowler undercard. So yeah, normally I would prefer it with maybe a bit of gin, maybe a bit of vodka, but today it's just the lime and soda.
Well, that's absolutely understandable as you're fighting in 3 weeks. So you were saying earlier you don't know who you're fighting yet?
Yeah, it's just a comeback fight. So it's just chosen. I'm not going to say chosen at random. You get a selection of fighters to choose from. You agree one, and that's it. But they've sent some over, we've sent some over, and then we'll agree one, and one will get picked for the night.
Isn't that difficult? You just in terms of like your training and your prep, because you're still like a relatively short space of distance between the fight. Is it hard to sort of do your research on who you're going to be fighting, or do you know everyone who's on the possibility list already?
No, you just gotta go with the flow. That's like we say it in between ourselves. That's just boxing. Like
right.
It can only happen in boxing, but it does. So you're just kind of trying to impose your strengths and work on yourself more than because you can. I've fought before where my opponents changed the day before. Like I've had 3 opponents before the Saturday. From the Monday to the Saturday, I've had 3 different opponents. So in boxing, I've just realised, like, unless it's a title fight where you know who's got the title, then anything can change at any given moment. Someone can test positive for COVID now, and it's off. So you've got to have a couple of backups as well.
This is the new world, isn't it? Unfortunately, everything happens at the last minute. We talk about obviously success on the podcast, but I'm really interested in like what the success DNA is. And your family, whatever it is, you've got it. Because these are the only the ones I know about. You've got a bodybuilder. You've got a Nikita who plays for Arsenal. You've got Lee who plays football for Liverpool. I know you've got people who are successful in karate. You've got a relative who's a pop star. I know you've got, is it a niece who plays for Everton Football Club?
Yeah, she's on her journey.
I mean, what did you all used to have in your porridge?
I think we're just so competitive as a family. It's one of them, like in our family, if you beat an adult, you've genuinely beat them. It's none of that, in some families you see, oh yeah, let the kids win. That doesn't happen in ours. So we've been competing since we could walk. Who can jump down the most stairs? Who can run the shop the fastest? Who can eat the dinner the fastest? Everything in our house from top to bottom is a competition.
And did you know when you were growing up that sort of rivalry and competition meant that you guys were kind of a little bit special?
There's so many of us that like... It's kind of numbers that'll make you. Some of us have to be successful because there's millions of us. There literally is. But yeah, I think we had like within ourselves a like proud thing where like, well, this we've seen that one do it, we're going to do it as well. We're not only going to do it, we're going to do it better. So.
And how do you keep in touch with kind of how they're all doing? Because obviously it's Nikita, isn't it? Your younger sister.
Yeah.
And does she play for Arsenal now?
She does now, yeah. She's just come from Lyon.
So do you just like keep your eye on the results, or do you go and watch or anything like that?
Yeah, we try and get to as many games as we can. Arsenal's a little bit more difficult. When she was at Man City, we've seen a lot more. We went to go and watch it in the World Cup, and my little girl absolutely loved that. She was just like, "Mummy, that's my auntie. That's my auntie." And I was like, "Yeah, I know." But she like, so yeah, we just try and get to as many as we can. But sometimes it's a little bit difficult to match up, diaries and stuff.
Yeah, I bet it is.
So, but we are very close as a family, not just with me and Nikita. Like Lee is technically he's my cousin's son, but my cousin is someone who I grew up in my nan's house. So he's like my brother, and most people think we're brother and sister, but we're not. We're just cousins.
Because he's just signed for Liverpool, hasn't he?
He's just signed his first
and he moved from Everton.
Yeah, he's another one.
Oh, God, I mean, that didn't hit the press, did it, in terms of that? The Blues aren't going to be happy.
Oh, no. I've supported so many teams. Nikita started off with Everton.
That's right.
So I've always supported Everton ladies. Then she went to Man City. I had to support Man City then. Now she's at Arsenal. Well, first of all, she was at Lyon. Then she was at Arsenal. So I'm just like I've got a little scarf for every team she's been in.
See, this just isn't allowed. But I'm going to let you off because I imagine you could handle yourself. So I'm not going to give you too much. But talking of football, I was really interested because your career in sport, you wanted to be a footballer, didn't you?
Yeah, I was. I mean, comparing it to today's standards, I probably wouldn't get in a team now, but I was in my time in that day quite good. So I got to Liverpool ladies myself. Was, you know, supposed to go for trials for England and stuff, and I got the opportunity to go to America on a scholarship. Now, for me, I wasn't very academic, but I kind of watched the Women's World Cup, and the USA have been the number one team for a very long time. They had this woman called Mia Hamm, and she was like the Ronaldo or the Messi of women's football. And I watched the World Cup on the BBC, and I was thinking, oh, I am well better than her. If I can just get to America, I'll get this £1 million. I'll have the house like they do on Cribs. I can be riding around this. And I'd spent this £1 million before I got it, but that was me. I had a bigger goal because then I knew I could be somebody if I did that. So I had to kind of buck up my ideas when it came to the academic side of school.
So this is interesting because obviously you've done such a lot in boxing, but let's just dwell on this. How old were you when you went out to America?
I was 18, so I'd done me like A levels, and I went and took the SATs that you have to get a certain score in America to be able to get into a certain university. Every university will have their standard for the score. And the first time I took it, I failed it because I thought I could just get by on my football skills alone. And obviously they were like, yeah, you might be good at football, but that's not enough, so you can't come in. And I was absolutely devastated. So they said, you can come back in the winter semester, but you'd have to take the test again. So I had to go back to school, go back to all the teachers I was ever naughty for, beg them to help me out. And they did. So I eventually went in the winter semester, and I was a kid from Toxteth, just up the road, on a full scholarship in America, living my best life.
And where was in America?
I was in New Jersey, and then went to Washington.
Amazing. Now it didn't go as you'd hoped though, because you suffered quite a bad injury. Was it a knee injury?
Yeah, it was me cruciate ligament.
Right.
Like I snapped it, and now you're probably talking maybe 4 months out or something, a couple of weeks out, but we're talking all them years ago. Yeah. So it was career ending, and they took me off and took me to hospital straight away. Anyone that knows me playing football, I never ever used to come off, and I was like, I need to come off. Like, it's bad. So they took me to hospital, and the next day I was in there overnight, and they said, look, you're not going to play again. And I was absolutely devastated because I thought, when you're speaking to people back home, we had Wayne Rooney, who was 16. He just, signed his contract for Everton. You had Beth Tweddle, who just won a Commonwealth medal. Katarina Johnson-Thompson was breaking all the schoolgirl records. And these were all like, 16, 15, 10. And I was a kind of woman at 20. And I thought, right, if I was going to be a sports star, I'd already be it by now. And I kind of, for one whole year, just like fell out of love with sport and didn't do anything.
Because, I mean, first of all, I think that's totally understandable that you felt that way, because you've been so committed to get where you were, to have the rug pulled under from you like that. Because I guess it's not just the sport. I mean, you must have had a circle of friends that were all associated with football and a very clear sort of life plan of how things were going to go. It's not just not being able to play the game, is it? Yeah. It's everything that goes around it. How did that feel?
Probably now, as an adult, looking back, I think I was a little bit depressed, but I didn't recognise that at the time. And sport, because it has been such a big part of my life, I've literally been training in some form of sport since I was 3 years old. So to not be able to do that, because I had a knee brace on as well, so I couldn't move my leg.
Was that what it was? Was it surgery then, a knee brace?
Yeah, it was surgery, and I was out. So sport was my motivation and drive to do anything, and I didn't have it anymore. And I struggled with that process of, like, what do I do now? Because I've always been, Tasha the footballer, or Tasha who did this, or Tasha, and then I was just Tasha, and I couldn't handle that.
I mean, I can really empathise with that, and what you're talking about there, isn't it, is having to, you've got to a certain stage of success already, something outside of your control happens, and then it's like a real reassessment of your goals and your dreams, and your opportunities, and I think it would take anyone some time. That so you mentioned a year. Were you back in Liverpool then?
Yeah, I'd come home because I didn't go to America for the academics. I didn't go there to get a degree and whatever else. I went there to go and play football and be Mia Hamm, the English Mia Hamm. And so when I was able to stay there, but I couldn't stand there on the sidelines clapping my mates every week in, week out. I was just heartbroken. So I decided to come home. I come home, obviously I've got this knee brace on, and people, like you said before, don't realise how social sport is. I'd lost a whole friendship group. So I'd come home and I didn't play sports anymore. So I'd lost that friend, all them friends. And then I was just in and out of jobs, in and out of being in town, and just couldn't find the motivation to do anything. And I had 7 jobs in 1 year. Because
what sort of work were you doing?
I was just on, I worked for MBNA on the phones, I worked for Vodafone on the phones, Littlewoods, just customer service roles really. But it just wasn't where I wanted to be, wasn't what I wanted to do, didn't excite me in any way. But I did it as I need this to be able to go out Friday and Saturday.
But that's the other interesting thing, isn't it? Is that you weren't just coming back into a situation where you didn't have your sort of sport group of friends around you. I imagine your old friends were doing the same things that I did when I was 20 and what most people do, which is, go out at the weekend and that sort of thing. Were you before then? Did you have to be quite disciplined in terms of things like your nights out and your girls' oldies and that sort of thing?
Yeah, I went on a few girls' holidays, obviously when you leave school and all stuff like that. But I've never been a big drinker, and I was the one in school, when you get a little bit older, when everyone's going out, I was like, oh, I've got football. Everyone's out on a Friday and Saturday, and I was like, oh, I've got training on Saturday, I've got the match on the Sunday, so I'm not going out. Or I'd go out, and when they was all getting drunk and whatever, I'd either stay and just be social with them, but I wouldn't be drinking, or I'd just go home. And there was loads of incidents that happened when we were younger kids, and people would be getting taken away in an ambulance just rotten drunk, and I wasn't there. And everyone's mum used to love me because they're like, why can't you be like Tasha? Why is Tasha never there? And so I was everyone's mum's blue eye.
I was a bit like that, Seriously, I was. I mean, and I used to just maintain a bit of a mask of respectability for my mates' mums, because I always used to pull off this kind of, as long as Simon's there, you'll be all right. So
that became the line.
Really?
Is Tasha going? Well, you can go.
And I mean, so where did boxing start then? I mean, you mentioned you had this year when you were just sort of reassessing your options. Had you boxed before?
I'd done a bit of Thai boxing, and everyone in our family has done karate, for the simple fact my uncle owns his own karate company and stuff. So we've all, even my daughter now does it. She loves it, but everyone goes through that and then goes on to a different sport. But we all start off in karate, and it was his karate gym. I said to him after I just got sacked from that last job, can I just have a set of keys? I'm down, I'm overweight, my brace is off now. And I just need to do something because I'm stuck in a bit of a rut. So he's like, yeah, of course, give me a set of keys. In his gym, there's a running machine, some free weights, a bag. And I used to just go there, train and go home, for an hour or whatever I do. I didn't really have a set routine. I'd just go and come back. And there was a woman who used to live over the road called Sylvia Singleton. And she was a trainer in the Rotunda, ABC. No, I didn't know that at the time, but she used to look after the karate gym when my uncle wasn't there because he wasn't from that area. And she'd knock over and be like, oh, I've seen you coming in and out a few times. What are you doing? Who are you? And I was like, oh, it's my uncle's gym. He's like, give me a set of keys. I can come and train when you want. She's like, why are you always training by yourself? Come to the local gym. I've got a women's only night in boxing. I think you'll really enjoy it. There's a nice group of girls, you just won't be training by yourself. It'll be better. And I was thinking to myself, boxing? Who wants to get punched in the face? Not at all. But I was too embarrassed to say no. And I was like, oh, I'll come next week. And it wouldn't go. And then the next time she'd see me in the gym, she was like, I thought you was going to come, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 6 to 7, I thought you was going to come. I was like, oh, I was busy last week, but I'll definitely come. And I then wouldn't go. And then in the end, like I used to be keen in and think, please don't let this woman see me. And then she'd pop up and be like, I love, are you going to come on? Or? So in the end, I was like, right, she's doing my head and I'm just going to go. So then the next time she says like, oh, what did you like it? I'll just say, no, I didn't like it. I'm not going back. So that was my intention. So I went to the session and it was probably one of the hardest sessions I've ever done. It was quite daunting as well, being, walking into the gym in the first place. And the next day I woke up and my whole body was aching in agony. But I thought, you know what? For the first time in a very long time, I pushed myself there. So I'm going to go back. And that was 17 years ago now. I still haven't left yet.
And what's happened to Sylvia Singleton? Do you still run into her?
Well, I still speak to her. Yeah, we'll always be close. She's left the gym now. She left the gym many years ago, but yeah, she was the one that introduced me to it. And like when I have fights in Liverpool, like now, I'll be messaging her saying, "Still, do you want tickets?" When I was in the Olympics here, and my main coach Mick McAllister, I was like, "Just want tickets to come down." They came down because they're a massive part of me being successful.
Well, I was going to say, it's funny when you reflect back at those moments in your life. We all do this, and you sometimes think, or I do anyway. I sometimes think, that was a moment there where I was at like a junction and I didn't know I was. And
you could have went either way.
You could. And you think to yourself, how could things have been different? And I think if you think carefully about your life, I think everyone has got like a handful of those moments. And you obviously made a great decision.
Yeah.
And Rotunda, is that Tony Bellew's gym?
Yeah. Tony Bellew, Liam Smith, Callum Smith, Stephen Smith, Paul Smith.
So there was
Joe McNally, Joe Selkirk, loads of successful boxers and champions, amateur and professionals.
And were they all about then when you were going in there?
I've actually known Tony since school because I went to school with Bellew. And well, my cousin went to school with Bellew. So I've known him all my life anyway. But yeah, when I was there, I was like a woman in the gym. They're all kids. Like not Bellew because he's only a year or two older, but like all Liam Smith and that were like babies and like in schoolboys, and I was coming in, I was the woman because I thought that at the time I was 20. So yeah, it was just it was mad to see everyone and like, but they were just kids.
Yeah,
and I was like the new woman. Like everyone was like when I first went, it was quickly decided that like Sylvia was like, look, you don't have to come to the keep fit classes if you want. You couldn't actually box for the club, but you'd have to come at different times. And because I wasn't doing anything and because I didn't have any goals or anything, I was like, you know what, why not? I'll do it. So I started going to the main boxing sessions, and at that time there wasn't really a big girls or female scene.
What year are we talking now then?
We're talking 2005. I think it was.
Because it's important to remember, isn't it, that until 1998, and I'm laughing because it just seems so incredible now, until 1998, it wasn't permitted for women to was it to make a living boxing, or was it just to box?
Professional boxing, yeah.
Right.
But because there wasn't no pros, the amateurs hadn't set the code either for women. So none of it would have changed without Jane taking on the boxing board of control.
And this is Jane Couch. Because I heard you on a podcast with her. Was she, just to set the scene, guys, Jane brought a legal challenge to those rules preventing women from earning a living as a boxer. And she was successful I think it was in the Supreme Court. And it was really, because I'm a lawyer originally, so it was interesting to me from a legal perspective, because she challenged it on the basis that it was a restraint of trade,
yeah,
that women could go to other countries and box, but they couldn't here. So it was clever, and that was what she won on. Is she someone you've known personally?
Yeah, Jane's always been like very supportive of us as amateurs and as pros. Like sometimes, well, it could be easy to be bitter. But Jane's the total opposite, and she's still striving now to make things better for females. I'm very, very close to Jane still.
So she must have been a role model in terms of the way she had to fight away from the ring to make it possible for other girls to make a living and to achieve their dreams.
Yeah, I remember being like a kid, not even involved. I was still playing footy at the time. And I remember the case. I think 98, 97, 98, I think it was. And I've always watched boxing, never like did it anything, but I'd always watched it with my dad. It was mine and my dad's thing. And I remember dad saying, "Oh, she's won the case." And I was like, "Oh, good on you, girl." That's what I thought to myself, good on you. And then I didn't think all them years later how it would affect me in my life.
Crazy. And tell me about once after you joined the gym, how soon was it that you actually started competing?
So because, like I said, I wasn't brand new to punching. I had done punching before. I'd done karate, obviously, Thai boxing, whatever. So I joined in the January, and by the June and I'd had 2 fights. So by the June, which is my birthday as well, the national championships was coming up, and Sylvia was my coach still then, and she said, "Look, you've only had 2. And now there's a whole different framework because there's so many females involved. So you've got a novice, which is I think 5 and under. You've got like an intermediate category, which is 10 or 15 and under, and then you've got an open class, which is 15 and over.
Right.
So it's that's the class A or open, whatever you call it. But there wasn't that when we started because there were so smaller groups of women. So she said, "You've only had 2. You could be boxing people that have had 20. Like, but you know, there's England coaches going to be around. So even if you box well and lose, you could still."
You're putting yourself in the shop window.
Yeah, you can still get on the England team and be part of that setup. So I was like, "How could I put my name down? I'll do it." And then, like, it was mad. We went down to, I think it was Aldershot, and I had to fight twice in one day. It's like a contender series. I had to fight twice in one day and then once the next day, and I ended up winning it. So then, once you're obviously the national champion, you're the champion of England. So then you start training with England, and you know, it took about a year before we started going to tournaments with England. And you know, England back then was not the England that it is now. England back then was 2 trackies between 7 of us, you know, 2 kits. One's a small, the other one's a large. And you just prayed that you wasn't the last one on that day because you'd have like 4 people's sweat on before you. so yeah, we've come a long way. But, you know.
But you'd come a long way as well, hadn't you? Because, I mean, how were you feeling when you got in the ring for the first time, having been through that, you know, terrible disappointment in terms of your football career? How are you feeling when you were embarking upon this next stage of your journey and you were at the stage where, you know, having came to boxing, you were now looking at a career in the sport? How did that feel?
It still wasn't a career by that time because, like I say, there wasn't really much of a women's boxing scene. It wasn't an Olympic sport then either. So, like, I was just happy that I was doing something. I was focused again. I had a drive. I had, you know, all them things. And things just kept happening to keep me in the sport and to keep me progressing. But, you know what it's like when we on that first club show. It was in the Adelphi, and I actually boxed someone who became my friend. She was only from another Liverpool club, but I had to box her because there was nobody else to box. And like, you know, it's a Rotunda club show. Everyone, as soon as you go in the door, you've got the likes of Bellew and the Smiths and all that, and they're all sizing their people up at the weigh-in, saying Bellew's like, "I'm going to knock him out. I'll knock you out first round," and I'm like, "Oh, this is good." And then so then we goes in, we get our little lunch, and like we get in the ring, and as I'm about to walk out, like, you know, Natasha Jonas of the Rotunda, and everyone, there's about 300-400 people there. Everyone goes wild. And I was like, oh, wow, this is all for me. And then get in the ring, wins. And then as I got out, some fella from one of the other kids' dads was absolutely bladdered. Was like, "Girl, that was brilliant. Can't believe that's your first fight. Make sure you keep that up. Amazing. What a debut." And I was like, "He's right there. I'm gonna go to my coach." I ran to my coach. I ran to Sylvia and said, "Look, any more of them put me..." I'd won it in the second round as well. I said, "Any more of them put my name on, I'll do it." She was like, yeah, we'll get you one. I said, "It might not be our club show next time, but we'll get you one." And then I had another one. And I won that within the second round, but I didn't get to the last round until I got to the championships.
And you were winning then, weren't you, for the next year? I mean, you were consistently winning medals, weren't you, at amateur level?
Yeah, I think the first year after I'd won the ABAs, which is the Championships of England, and then the first year training with England, the step up between domestic and international was huge. And like I thought, I'd knock everyone else within the second round, been doing it all along. And then, you go to an international competition and these are girls, because a lot of countries have had boxing for a very long time, like so Sweden, France, all the Nordic countries and a lot of Europeans, Russia, and like I was like, wow, these are taking me best shots and not moving. This is a bit scary. Wow. You're supposed to be on the floor, but you're not. You're just laughing. So yeah, that took a while, and took a while for us to become. We was kind of the team then that maybe in a tournament you wanted to draw, but then in 2009 they decided that it's going to be an Olympic sport, and then we got Olympic funding, we got on the Olympic team, got on the Olympic program, we get the best coaches, the best support team, doctors, nutritionalists, strength and conditioning coaches, and then we become the team that you don't want to draw at all.
Well, I'm going to come to the Olympics in a minute, but I'm interested in what you're saying there about the team around you and the resources that you had to develop your skills increased. How did your sort of training change at that point and focus on things like nutrition?
When you got onto the Olympic squad, then you are a full-time athlete. So, I was all right for me because I was like only part-time working as a youth worker at that time. But some of the girls like Amanda Coulson took pay cuts to go on to be involved in the Olympic program because obviously you got the opportunity to be in the Olympics. So once you're on that setup, we was in Sheffield EIS, in the English Institute of Sport, and we trained there Monday to Thursday every week. 2 or 3 times a day we were training. You woke up, you weighed in, then you went to the track, you ran, you went back for breakfast, you come back for strength and conditioning, you have lunch, you come back for actual boxing session, you go and have your tea, and then sometimes you came back, sometimes you didn't, other times you just go and chill. But we were living there, and that was the life. You had on hand the best coaches in the country. You had a nutritionist, like I say, strength and conditioning coach, sports psychologist, doctor, a booth of health plan, which we'd never had before. We had our own kit.
No more sweat.
No more.
Or just your own, maybe.
Yeah, it was just all them things. Anatomy and physiologist. I don't even know what an analyst where they'd analyse bouts and scoring and how to judge us and score. We had all that to tap into, and we'd never had that before. The Rotunda was really good with me when I got onto the international team. They started sending me to international club tournaments, so I would be boxing some of them girls that were in their national teams, but it was for their club. So they was very supportive in sending me to them tournaments, but not everyone could access them. But then obviously when you're at GB, they fund you to go to every single tournament. So then we were going every single month, we were somewhere. And I was competing against Amanda Coulson, Ruth Raper, Chantal Cameron to try and be the one person selected to go to the one competition every month. So you constantly, you lose, then that one goes to the top of the hill. Next one, and then you're trying to work your way back to be number one. Eventually in the 2012, they said, right, you're the one that's leading at the minute. You're going to go to the one qualifier that there was.
I was interested in what you said earlier about being funded. You would have been about, what, mid-20s by this point?
Yeah, I went to the Olympics at 28.
Got you. So in terms of just making a living when you were amateur, because just obviously at this point, you're still an amateur boxer, how do you make your living? Because obviously you will have had bills to pay and just normal things you wanted to do. Do you get funded from the sport?
Yeah, you get, so UK Sport and the lottery give boxing an amount of money, and that's got to be shared down between England GB get it, and then they distribute it to Wales boxing, England boxing, Scotland boxing, and they keep a pot of it as well to fund their programme. But then obviously they draw English boxers, Scottish boxers and put them onto that programme. And that's how so you get a fund from them. Every athlete on the Olympic program can access that, or does access that. But it's all based on how well you do. So, you know, when we first got on, we were on the lower tier because we hadn't gone to any competitions that had put us on the higher tiers. So for a while, it took us a while to even get to the higher tiers.
I'm just putting myself in your shoes there, because obviously you're an athlete with big aspirations in terms of where you want to go in the sport, but you're also a young woman who's got the same, just, you know, you want the car, you want to think about houses and all that sort of thing. Financially, to commit to that sort of career as an athlete, have you got to almost think, well, that's got to wait, or is what you're earning enough to do those sort of things which anyone in their mid and late 20s would want to think about?
A little bit. I mean, I was still living at home, so like bills wasn't. I just had to give me Nan a bit of keep, and I had a car. I actually got a sponsored car once I got on GB as well. So that sorted out the travel, and they do fund you for your travel anyway. So everything, and you when you're staying there, they fund everything. When you're in camp is funded for, so you don't have to pay for like a hotel. You don't have to pay for travel. It's all reimbursed once you're there. So all that was taken care of. I was living at home, so I didn't have many outgoings anyway. But a little bit different for people like Amanda and stuff who did. That she owned her own home. Like I said, she had to take a pay cut. So for her, I mean, I wouldn't be able to tell you her story because I don't really know it that well. But for me, it wasn't that bad.
I think my view on this is that we don't value role models enough in society, and any woman who had an aspiration to go on any sort of sporting career would have been inspired by role models such as yourself and the other girls you were fighting with. And to me, it feels wrong that committing to that profession, to commit to being an athlete, but also you're committed to being a role model, because whether you like it or not, people will be looking up to you. It doesn't feel right to me that isn't rewarded financially. And lottery money and whatnot, great. I just think that we have to think about how the government use taxpayers' money to make sure that role models that young people can aspire to are properly incentivized to keep going down their track. What do you think?
No, I agree. Obviously, 100%. And I think there's so many people who are, you know, financially stable now for life for doing absolutely nothing and having no talent and no whatever. And then you've got people who are committed. And I'm not saying they're not committed or anything, you know, making money how you can make your money. That's good on you if you can. But yeah, I agree with what you're saying. Is it, you know, there's positive role models doing things, and okay, people will say, well, you're only good at a sport, and that's great, but you know, I am now a lot more confident than I ever was. I'm committed, can work on my own or as part of a team, reliable, you know, all these things. And if you asked an employer, well, I presume if you asked an employer, what would you want from your best employee? They'd be the things that they'd say.
Bite your hand off, absolutely. Yeah, it's a strange one to me. That I'm not claiming to have the solution, you know, right here, but all I'm convinced about, the more I do this podcast and the more I think about how we can sort of bottle success and how we can say to young people, school is very important, extremely important, but also it's about looking around you at people who have walked the same streets as you, who look the same as you, talk the same as you, who have gone on to do fantastic things with their lives. And it seems to me that we need as many of them as possible, and to keep them in the eye of up and coming young people, they've got to be properly incentivized. And the more stories I hear on this, I just think we need to take a look at it, because I'm just wondering how many sports role models or any sort of role model we lose because they reach, say, the mid-20s and they just think, oh, do you know what? I could probably go make more money if I
Do something else.
yeah, I'm glad you didn't, and I think it's admirable, but I think we're getting something wrong, that we're neglecting our role models.
Yeah, I do a lot of work in schools and community groups and primary schools as well. And that's one of the biggest messages that I try and get across, because I am only some snotty-nosed scally kids from just up the hill, in Toxteth. I'm not. Sometimes you can sit there and you can watch your Wimbledon and you can watch your, cricket, or you can watch your rugby, whatever sport it is, and you think, yeah, it only happens to them people. It only happens to them. It only happens to them. And I am literally from here, so I'm massive on promoting, anybody can do it. If I've done it, anyone can do it. But yeah, it's just it's crazy, and parents play a big, massive role in that as well, because my mum took me to every practice that I ever had to get to, but also she would always encourage me to be better and want me to do better. And if I set the standard somewhere, she'd be like, no, you can aim a little bit higher than that. You don't have to just aim for that. So, and sometimes it strikes me going into schools how, some kids aren't that supported. So, that parents do play a massive role in that.
And the reality, of course, of life is that not everyone has that same level of support. And that, to me, is an even greater reason why we have to provide kids with role models that they can aspire to, who aren't necessarily in their immediate family. Mm-hmm. Because it would be lovely if everyone's parents pushed them along, because mine did as well. But like you're saying, we mustn't give up on kids who haven't got that, which is why we need to be putting those who are the evidence that success is possible, no matter what city you were born in, or what your background is, or whether you're working class or middle class, or which school you went to, that success is possible. They've got to be put front and centre. Yeah. And if that isn't a reason to reward people as soon as it becomes clear that that's where they're going, then I don't know what is. Sorry to interrupt this amazing podcast. Today's podcast is brought to you by my friends at Good To Go Recovery. And here it is here, and it is the ultimate recovery drink. You've got lemon, you've got apple, you've got cherry, and I use Good To Go after I've finished working out. My wife likes it first thing in the morning, and the reason for that is that it's proven to hydrate you faster than water. It's packed with vitamins, electrolytes, and minerals, and it contains no sugar or caffeine. So if you, like me, have parts of the day when you need to reboot your mind or supercharge your body, then Good To Go Recovery is the drink for you. And get this, friends, you can order via their website or their Instagram channels. And if you quote the code SWCC10, you get 10% off all of your orders. Not your first order, but all of your orders. Can you believe it? So that is Good To Go Recovery, which is your ultimate recovery drink. And now it's back to the podcast. I don't know what it is, but you mentioned your mum in terms of pride earlier. How did your mum feel when you became the first British female boxer to represent the country at the Olympics in 2012?
She actually told me a story of when I was 4 watching the 88 games in Seoul. Now, I'm only 4, but like I say, we was always very active as a family, and we always did stuff. And she said I was watching the Olympics and on the telly, and obviously there's a million sports going on. And I was like, Mum, I'm going to be there. I'm going to be there. And my mum was like, whatever. And I'm like, no, Mum, I'm going to be there. And she said, you need to go and practice if you're going to be there. It takes a lot of hard work to be there. So I've gone and got me a little flyaway ball and gone and kicked it against the wall for an hour. And then 24 years later, I go to China. I have 5 fights in 6 days. And I qualify, and I came home. I'd been emotional, and but I hadn't cried. And when I see my mum in the airport, my mum burst out crying, and I burst out crying, but I didn't really know what I was crying for. And she was like, you know what? I remember you being that little kid at 4, saying, Mum, I'm going to be there. And it took you 24 years, 105 different sports, but you got there, and that's I'm so proud of you. You've never cared about what your mates did, because like I say, none of my So my mates were drinking on the street corners and stuff. And I was like, no, I've got training tomorrow. I've got a game today. So, you know, you didn't care just because your mates didn't want to do it. Didn't mean that you didn't want to. You stuck to what you wanted to do and you kept at it. You worked hard. You tried your best. Never give up. And you, most of all, you believed in yourself even when nobody else did. And you've got your chance. And you know, that's a message that I give out. You've got to. Football didn't happen for me, and I was. I'd have put my life on that. I'd have been a professional football player, but it didn't. And another opportunity presented itself. And you have to take them opportunities. Sometimes, like you say, you come to a split road and you don't realise how, like now looking back, that was a major turning point in my life because of everything that's happened after it. But you have to take them opportunities when they come. And if what's the worst that can happen is it doesn't work out. And okay, but you're not it's not going to affect you in any way. You just got to move on. But
and the reality is, if it doesn't go perfectly, you will reach another junction.
Exactly.
And you will. It's not just making a decision to go in one direction is not the end of the line. But you are right that there comes a point where opportunities tend to, that they're not infinite. You don't keep getting presented with chances, so you do have to back yourself and to take risk. And as you say, what's the worst that can happen? I mean, for you,
it's worked out well.
It really has. So the Olympics went. You had some tough fights, didn't you? But you got through to, was it through to the last 16?
The last 8, yeah.
The last 8, and
I
then
got beat by Katie for the last 8 for the medal.
Kate, yeah. God.
She's been a thorn in my side since.
Well, I was going to say this was the start of a real rivalry with. Let's explain who we're talking about. Katie Taylor.
Katie Taylor
is she's a very successful and accomplished female boxer. And you first fought at those Olympics was because she went on to get gold, didn't she?
She went on to get gold, yeah. That's the only saving point, is that I got beat by the gold medalist. That's the only saving
Well,
point.
I always try, whenever Liverpool get knocked out of the FA Cup, I always try and see if they've been knocked out by the eventual winner. It makes me feel slightly better. Yeah. But how, because obviously she was someone who was she a favourite for that?
Yeah,
that
she was
tournament?
100% the favourite. I think she was, going into that, I think she was 4-time world champion and 5-time European champion. And she hadn't been beat for like 3 years on the trot. And to be fair, the times before that she had been beat had kind of been a little bit robberies from home countries.
Right.
So,
just let me ask you about that, just while it's on my mind. That issue, when you see robberies, do you mean kind of odd points decisions and that sort of thing? What happens there in boxing? Because I remember.
Don't get me started.
Well, let's just, I remember when I was watching Tyson Fury against Deontay Wilder. That was the first fight.
Yeah.
And everyone thought Fury had quite comfortably won. And was it a draw?
It was a draw.
A draw.
The first
That's
one,
right, yeah. And obviously, some of the commentators were making some quite savage statements about the judges' motivations. What's your view? Is that just a strange set of decisions on the night, or is there something more sinister going on?
I think boxing right now, especially professional boxing, is at such a pivotal point. The amateurs, there was some odd decisions in 2012. There was definitely odd decisions in 2016 in Rio. And this time in Tokyo, it seemed to have cleaned it up. They had lots of internal investigations. They had the OIC on it. So amateur boxing seems to have...
They're on the right track.
Yeah, they're on the right path. Now, professional boxing, it seems like every other week we're having a problem with how did they score it like that. A judge only last weekend with the Valdez came out and said, I apologise, but you're apologising after you've made the decision, after you've put it on. And it doesn't change anything for that fighter. You've robbed them of their moment, their time, their glory. And
there's a lot of money involved.
And wherever there's big money, there's always going to be, strange decisions, let's say. And with boxing, because it's just on you what you prefer. There's no set guidelines for how you should score a fight. It's basically how you want. Yeah, it's discretion. So you're going on what you like. Some people like, people who are more offensive. Some people are like people who are more accurate. Some people are like whatever it is that you like. But what happens is it changes depending on who's in the ring, and that shouldn't be the case. If you like what you like, then you should like that the next week and the next week. So then Canelo's winning being defensive. but then somebody else can't win being defensive. And well, how is that possible? Because you're the same judges, so how can you score a fight differently? And it happened so many times. I think over fight camp, it happened so many times over just professional boxing. It's like literally every week there is a fight where you're saying, how did that person win that?
And are you seeing any signs of that improving, or there at least being calls from media, other boxers, promoters for it to improve?
Well, the thing is that promoters, you get a selection of judges, and you kind of choose the judging group. You don't allow to choose the judges because the board will choose that, but you get a select group that you can choose from. Now, I mean, I'm not saying that this happens, but in theory, you can choose the ones that side with you and get rid of the others. So then the board then is choosing from the group that you've selected to who's going to choose them fights. So that's what basically how it works. And because there's so, like, you got Canelo, he's the biggest pound for pound, money earner, biggest name in the sport, and rightly so. But he's paying so much in commission for all his titles and to each but like board to WBC, WBA, he's paying so much money to them that it's difficult for them to go against him, because if he doesn't, then he doesn't pay the sanction fees. So that it shouldn't work like that, but it does. And we've had cases of people testing positive for banned substances, and then they're still allowed to box. And then it's literally laughable at the minute. It's like it's fair on everybody but the boxer at the minute.
Because it's such a strange situation to me in that, because obviously sometimes in football, referees get accused of incompetence or of being bullied by players or the crowd, but and that kind of gets made quite a big thing of it, and it's a strange one for me in a sport where discipline and commitment and professionalism underpins the athletes themselves and the level of determination and dedication they've got to show in their lives. Where you've got that, and then those responsible for their results and for fair outcomes of fights, there's such a question mark hanging over. It seems very strange to me.
It's let's have it right. You're going in, you're hurting somebody. This is not where you've got to reach the line at a certain time. You've got to score this goal in a set. You're trying to hurt the person opposite you. So some people are going into fights already behind and they haven't thrown a punch. Not a punch is being thrown, and that shouldn't be the case. You should be going in fair, and it should be 0-0 to start with. But sometimes it isn't, and that's what's wrong with it at the minute.
Solution?
I don't know. I honestly don't know.
Does it need people, do you think, from outside of boxing to come in completely independently and think about how the sport is regulated, how it's officiated, how it's administered? I'm probably not expressing that very well, but I'm just wondering if this degree of independence, people come in who've not got any dogs in the fight, if you see what I mean, who've got no conflicts with anyone.
I do think that, but I also think that when a big something controversial happens, that referees and judges should have to be stand up and made accountable. Sometimes now on certain platforms like The Zone, they'll have a live referee going through the rounds and saying, right, I scored at this is why. But he's nothing to do with that. He's just for the channel. So when it's so different and so vastly wide, then the referee should have to come out and
explain themselves.
Mm-hmm. Every other sport they would have to.
Yeah.
But like I say it week in, week out in boxing. Only in boxing it doesn't.
It must be so frustrating for you and all of your colleagues and everyone in the sport. Back to Katie Taylor. What's your recollection of the fight in the Olympics?
I remember. So I'd boxed Katie before, only in a tournament, just about a month or two before the Olympics. And I lost the first 2 rounds. I think it was 2-1 or 3-1. And then won the last 2 rounds, 3-1. So they were like, right, I'm renowned for a slow start. And it was point scoring at that time. So they was like, look, you need a better start. You need a quick start. So that was my thing, to go in and have a quick start. And I went in the first round, thought I had a good first round, being a couple of points down. Second round again, I thought I had a good second round, but ended up being a few more points down. And I went back and sat in my chair at the third, and I was like, right, this is it, right? You've only got 1 Olympics. Like, you can either skate around. Everybody was at the time getting beat by Katie, like, 10-2, 15-3. And I was thinking, right, I can be happy that I'm only getting beat by 3 points and just skate around. Or I can go for it, and whatever happens, happens, but you'll be able to live with yourself after that. So, right, round 3 comes, and I just went, right, I'm going for it. And then it ended up being a little bit wider than it probably should have been, but
you felt you gave your best shot.
I didn't have anything left to give. And when I came out and I'd done the interviews, I was like, I didn't have anything else. Like, I literally done my best, and no one can ask you to give more than that. So
no, absolutely no regrets. What I'm going to do now is fast forward a little bit, because I think to describe the sort of next 10 years of your career, which obviously is bang up to date, you've consistently won medals at Europeans and at Worlds. But then there was another event in your life in that a little one turned up. So tell me, how old's your daughter now?
She's 5. She's 5 going on 25.
Yeah. Well, I've got 2 girls, and they just run rings around me. So I've stopped even trying to apply any sort of parental control. I'm dreadful at it. How do you? Because obviously
they're only tiny, but they've got you wrapped around their tiny little fingers.
Tell me about it. How do? Because obviously, working mums and working parents have challenges anyway. But does being a professional boxer, does that present specific challenges in terms of just managing like the daily grind of nurseries and teas and baths and beds and all school and all that sort of thing?
Well, at first I did struggle, because I was like, oh, I'm getting home at like 5 o'clock. I'm literally playing with her for an hour, getting a bath, getting her fed, and then putting her to bed. I was thinking 2 hours is not enough, and an hour in the morning to get ready, it's not enough. Like, I felt like I was like failing here. And then, like, I'm lucky to have a group of mates who all our kids are like 4 months between. So I was speaking to my mates, and I was like, I just don't feel like I'm getting enough time. And they were like, yeah, we feel the same. Like, so I then realised that it wasn't me. That's any working mum goes through the same, because if most people work 9 to 5, you put your kids 9, you're putting your kids in school like 3 o'clock, or after school 5 o'clock you pick them up, and that's not just me. That's most working mums. So I felt a little bit more human, and like, I don't know, I felt like relieved that I wasn't the only one, because I did think that my sport's taken over here, and it shouldn't, because I've got a new person that I'm responsible for. But after that, I was fine with it. But yeah, it is tough, and it can be challenging. And
does she know what you do?
She does, but to be honest, she doesn't care one bit what I do, because she loves Nikita. So she always just says, I want to be like Nikita. So, like, and especially after we went and seen her in the World Cup, she will love that experience, and that was good for us to have and be able to be like, there's your auntie, and she was my auntie.
Well, I was going to ask you, because what's your what direction do you think your daughter's going to go in? Because she's surrounded by role models and by success. It's a wonderful position for her to be in, to have this this inspiration built into her DNA. Has she said, I fancy having a go at the boxing, mum, or is it football that she's kind of really interested in?
It was football. She absolutely loves karate, but now she's gymnastics. She's been moved up to the big class in the thingy, so she thinks she's the next best medal. If you ask her right this second, she'd say a gymnast.
Would she? Yeah. And the thing is that when they're that little, because my 2 are into Muay Thai now. They've done Muay Thai for about a year now, and they've really, really got into it. But before that, we had gym and we had swimming and all these things. So, but it's nice, isn't it, when they're kind of working these things out?
And like I said, I've tried 105 sports. It's just that boxing chose me in the end. And I think that's what I will do. I will open, give her the opportunity to do whatever you want, and one will find it.
Yeah.
I think, like you say, it's important that you do open them doors, and they'll pick one themselves, or one will pick them.
Yeah. Oh, I think so. Back to Katie, because she's proven to be something of a,
thorn in my side.
Yeah, a bit of a nemesis. But having said that, I just wanted to ask you, because you had a rematch against Katie in May this year, and one of the things that I picked up, it was more after the fight than anything, is that whereas you mentioned earlier about Tony Bellew, kind of, there was this really like alpha male style stuff in the weigh-in and all that sort of thing. But I remember after the fight, I thought I saw like a warmth between you. Did I get it wrong?
No, yeah, we've known each other for a long, long time, and we don't hate each other. I'm playing table tennis with a mum in the bubble. I'm playing snooker with an agent in the bubble. So it's just one of them. Literally, for me anyway, it literally is business. Once the bell goes for the first round, till the bell goes for the last round, we're doing business, and we're not. I'm not trying to be friendly. I'm not trying to be funny. But once it's done, it's done. It is what it is.
When you're in the ring with someone who is a very able opponent, like someone like Katie, who's going to give you a good fight. Are you thinking of it as a fight, or is it more just like a tactical exercise? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
in terms of
with boxing, you've got to be in control when you're out of control. And I think I got beat by Vivian Obanoff a year or two before, and she hit me with one shot. That's the only shot that she had in her locker, and we'd worked on blocking this shot, and she caught me with it. And because she caught me with it, I was so fuming that she caught me with it that I'd lost control.
Yeah.
And I reacted emotionally, and in the end, I ended up getting stopped. So, like, that was a learning curve for me, because that had never happened before. My ego was damaged, everything. I had to build myself up from that. But I learned in that, like, no matter what happened, I have to be in control. Because once you lose it, that's when you'll start doing things that you don't normally do, and people can see it, and it's wild. And so you've got to, the best way to describe it is being in control when you're out of control.
I can see, but I can see how it must be easy to lose that control.
Yeah.
But
Mike Tyson said everyone's got a plan till you get punched in the face.
that's right. Yeah, this is brilliant, isn't it? Have you seen how good he looks, Tyson, now?
Still, yeah.
Oh, he's amazing, isn't he?
Yeah.
Machine.
Did you see the Evander Holyfield fight?
Oh, yeah.
See, Holyfield, like, he's 58, he's in great shape, and there's a difference between being fit and being boxing fit, and you can see that there's damage done to him, and that Belfort was not taking it easy at all. He went to hurt him, and it was sad to see like a legend like that.
Well, I was going to say,
be like that and look vulnerable. He looked vulnerable. He looked shot, if I'm honest.
What's his motivation, Holyfield?
Money.
Is it money?
It has to be, because you're not going to do that otherwise. I don't think. But I don't blame him either. If you're.
Isn't he sorted money-wise, though, after the career he had?
He's got about 105 kids.
See, fair enough. And you live to your means as well, don't you? I mean, I think we've got to be careful about jumping to conclusions about people who've made lots of money through in a short period of time, because very few people just sit on it. Most people spend it, don't they?
Spend it, yeah. And you like you say, you live in this house and spend this much money a month, and then you still spend like that, even though it's not there anymore.
Well, it becomes you become to rely on it, don't you?
Yeah.
What's so the fight with Katie this year? You were I can't stress the word narrowly beaten enough.
1 round.
Well, I thought you'd won. I've heard lots of really credible boxing commentators said that they thought you had it. How did you think you'd done at the end?
At the time, I can never tell. Like, I'm trying to tally it up in my head as I'm sitting there in the corner, and Joe's like, "Here, listen." I'm like, "Yeah." So I can never tell, so I don't even try anymore, because it frustrates me trying to work out whether I won the round
I
or
suppose
not.
it's not out of your control then, isn't it?
Yeah. So I just, and to be honest, I fully 100% totally trust what Joe's saying is right, because Joe's not one of them, oh, you're winning and you're 3 rounds down. He'll tell you, look, you'll see in the Harper fight, he says, after 8, he says, level. You need these last 2 rounds. So I know what he's telling me is the truth.
Yeah.
So
The thing I admire about you most is because you're not coming across at all. I mean, obviously there would have been a big build up to that fight. It was a rematch of a really interesting, important fight that took place nearly 10 years earlier. But you're not coming across as in any way frustrated or deflated or demoralised. You're coming across like you're just keen to get on to what the next stage of the journey is.
yeah, I think I came back into boxing because even though as good as my amateur career was, there was some kind of unfinished business that I wasn't fully satisfied with how it went. And I came back to professional boxing to rectify that and to become a world champion and be able to draw a line in the sand and be like, okay, now I've finally got my piece. I can walk away from the sport, and I haven't got that yet. So until I get that, I'm going to keep banging on doors. I'm going to keep asking for opportunities. I'm going to keep going for world titles. Until I get it. So there's no point in being down. There's no point in being frustrated about decisions that haven't gone my way or whatever, because it's not going to change. And it'll only put me mentally in a worse position. I take the positives from each performance and move forward, because it boxing, you're your own biggest critic anyway. So I don't need people to tell me, oh, you went bad, this that was wrong. I already know.
And also, once you've taken that opportunity, there's no such thing as failure. It's all just learning.
Yeah,
it's all just experience.
Every time I failed, it took me one step closer to being successful. So, the Harper fight was another draw. And, that gave me the confidence to be able to, I knew then for Katie, I had to be Harper and better. So that set the benchmark for, that's the least I'm going to perform. I'm going to get at, that's the worst I'll accept of myself. Now I'm going to get better, and I did. But now I know I have to be better again, and I will be.
So what is next then? Are you going to keep firing for that world title?
Keep firing for the world title. Which one? I don't know yet. I'm anything between 130 and 147. It looks like. I'm on the Smith Fowler undercard on October the 9th.
Is that in Echo Arena?
M&S, yeah. It'll always forever be the Echo Arena,
yeah,
the M&S. But yeah, I'll be on there. It's just a comeback fight. Get active. I'm going to try and I'm getting a little bit old now. So I'm trying to be as active as I can and get that fight in. Just get a good solid active. I think inactivity has as like plateaued me sometimes.
Yeah.
So I want to just be as active as I can and get out and then, eventually win that world title.
And have you got a sense for when it's realistic you get a shot at the world title?
I'd say early next year.
Right, as soon as that.
I'm hoping to have two more fights this year. One obviously October the 9th. Hopefully get out again November, December, and then early next year I'll have another fight.
Well, wish you good luck, and I don't think you'll need it. But just one thing I wanted to ask you before I ask you about your goals after boxing. How come it's so rare, if ever, that a women's bout is top of the bill at like what I would think of as like a proper kind of good card?
Yeah.
Because I remember when, I think it was this time, I heard a commentator say, and I think it was when you fought Katie this time.
Yeah, should have been top of the bill.
Yeah, and I was thinking, well, that's bonkers. Why aren't you? Because you've obviously...
Because it was the heavyweights. Everyone loves the heavyweights.
Is that right,
but
is it?
To be fair, when that was press release went out and it was confirmed that I was fighting Katie, I would say 80% of the comments was, why isn't this fight top of the bill? And that alone goes to prove how far women's professional boxing has come, because I doubt they would have ever said, definitely not in Jane Couch's time, definitely not when I was coming up through the amateurs, and now they're saying, why isn't it? So we've got a long way to go, but we definitely come a long way as well.
We haven't. You've been one of the pioneers of that, Tasha. You really have. How does that feel?
You know what? I was saying this to someone the other day. When you're before the baby, when I'm Tasha GB, I am so focused on the result that I'm selfish. I'm unbearable. Like when I lost, it'd be wrecking me whole week until the next competition that I can go and fight and do it all again. And you don't even think, oh, I'm a role model or I'm this. I'm just going to get a result. That's what I've trained for 4 years or whatever, and that's what I'm going to get. And then it's only when I look back at the 2012, I think, you know what, we did something special there. But it took me to get away from that, to look back. Because at the time, I didn't even care that it was the first female boxer or anything. But now I look back and I'm proud of that. And I think the good thing about being a mum, and now I can distinguish between the athlete Natasha and the mum Natasha. And for me, that's better because I can separate the life. I never used to be able to get away from being the athlete. I was always the athlete. Even when I was outside of GB and I was at home, I was still watching myself and critiquing myself. I was still watching me weight and, and now as soon as them gym doors shut or I shut the door and come into the house, I have to switch to mum mode because she doesn't care about athlete. She doesn't care about for athlete mum. She just wants mum. And for me, I think that's been, so, I mean, some people might struggle with that, but for me, it's been the best thing because I can finally switch off.
Yeah. And it gives you perspective. I think as well when your time in boxing comes to an end, I think you'll continue to reflect back on this issue of being a pioneer and about the hundreds of thousands of girls who are now fighting in the sport and enjoying the sport, and hopefully many of them going on to follow in your footsteps. But tell me about that, Natasha. What about after boxing? What's your plans? Because aren't you part of the Sky Sports commentary team for boxing?
I have been. Hopefully I can become a permanent member soon. We're working on it. I'm working on it.
Your people are talking to their people.
Yeah, well, it's you're sitting there talking about what you know.
Yeah.
And you've got the best seats in the house and you're critiquing someone else and not yourself. So what's not to love about that job? I do lots of work, youth and community work in and around Liverpool. I'm in lots of schools just going in, and I'm trying to set up my own charity regarding alternative education and knife crime. So,
because I touched on this earlier. When you think about the problems that society's got, you can't beat having the examples that people can look up to of role models who have not been born in a privileged position. I mean, I think you were hugely privileged being in the family that you were, but in terms of having wealth or anything like that handed to them on a plate, people who are in tough spots, they need hope. That they need to be able to see a route forward, and I think that's where we need you and others like you, Natasha. So because I think we're missing an opportunity. We've talked a lot about opportunities here, but unless winners like yourself view that path as being something which both works for you and can work for others, I think we're missing a trick in society. So I hope you do go down that road. Any thoughts on business at all?
No, not really. I always think to myself, I haven't got a business mind. It's not my thing. But I know if I had to, like with the academics in school, if I had to, I would. I've just got to find my niche for business and see what I'm interested in and where to go. But I'm sure I'll be knocking and asking you questions.
Well, you certainly can. I mean, the reason I ask is because I think what is it you need to succeed in anything? And I conclude business in that. That's clear vision. It's determination. It's being able to make sacrifice where it's required, and it's inspiring people. And you've certainly inspired me. And I just want to say thank you for coming on our podcast. It's been absolutely fascinating to meet a legend of the sport, and I'm not just saying that. And we've really enjoyed your company.
Cheers. I've actually got a question for you.
Please.
What if I say to you, winning, like what is winning to you?
I'm going to answer it in two ways.
Okay.
I think that you're a winner if you prioritize your family and your health. And that's a platform from which you can achieve your goals. So if someone is content in their situation, they love the family, they look after themselves, then I think they're successful. I think when I use the word winning, I'm talking about actually accomplishing goals that you've set for yourself to build upon that platform of good relationships and good health. And I think those goals needn't be hugely ambitious. I think that people who set themselves goals to make reasonable steps in the career, people who set themselves goals to make a difference in the community in which they operate, that's winning. It's about setting a goal and then committing to its achievement. I don't think it's about money. I don't think it's about material possessions. I don't think it's about superficial things. But it's about being able to sit back and say, I've prioritized my health and my family, but I've also set myself targets and I've achieved my potential in terms of those targets.
That was a good answer.
Was that all right?
Yeah, that was a good answer. Very good answer.
Thank you for the question. No, I love answering that sort of question, and I've loved having you as a guest on Success Won't Come Calling. So good luck in a few weeks' time. I don't think you'll need that at all. I hope you get a crack at the title early next year as you'd hoped. And we'd love to have you back in the
with all my belts.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we can definitely get the press out for that one.
Right.
But in the meantime, Tasha, thank you so much for being a guest on Success Won't Come Calling.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Bye. Oh man, that was awesome.